Hello and welcome to the Sovereign Stylist YouTube channel. Make sure that you get the chance to subscribe below and also to subscribe to notifications by clicking on the bell. My name is Darcy Harrison. I am the Advocacy Director for the Sovereign Stylist. And our topic today is an Advocacy Roundtable, and we will be talking about legislation that affects the cosmetology industry.
My name is Cody Henry. I'm the Communications Director for the Sovereign Stylist. Prior to that, I used to be a hairdresser back in Virginia, and then I decided to go to college, and now I'm in Arizona and about to go off to law school. So let's just jump into it.
Perfect. And just a little reference on me, I am a salon owner in Washington State as well as a booth renter. And we're going to talk first about deregulation in the cosmetology industry. And I'll throw to Cody in just a second. A lot of our industry is talking about eliminating the license, either diminishing the hours required in cosmetology school to get your license, either as a barber, cosmetologist, hair designer, whatever. And also to reduce the license all the way to just a sanitation course. So what are some potential pros and cons of deregulation, do you think, Cody?
Health hazards, definitely health hazards.
Right.
Chemical burns and more chemical burns.
Right. It's not just quality control of haircuts and hair color and whether they're good or not, right? It's about, just the basic understanding of safety and sanitation, and also being able to protect our clients not only from chemical burns, but now in the age of COVID-19, I think it's really, really important that we keep speaking to, we have the training in safety and sanitation, and so we have the core knowledge to be able to protect our clientele, and without the requirements and the education to do that, it diminishes our ability to protect ourselves as well as the clientele that comes in. And especially with the virus going around, we have to make sure that we're ultimately the most careful that we can be. And part of that is being regulated as an industry.
Absolutely. And just like the simple fact of something that is regulated, there is always some type of oversight to it. And when you talk about deregulation, you also talk about stripping away that other piece of it. So who do you report a salon to? Who do you report a stylist to that's doing things that aren't safe or just hazardous to people's health or the community in general? That type of stuff really needs to be thought about, and it can be dangerous, it can be deadly.
Right. And the other thing is there is this aspect of thinking that the client should have the option of being informed of, this person is not licensed to do this, blah, 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 blah. I assume all the risk involved, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. In my personal opinion, the client doesn't know all that can go wrong. They don't know what contagion that they can get or not. And the education of the professional and their expertise is there to protect them. We can't assume that the public has that education on what is dangerous to them.
Absolutely. I mean, choice only works if you're aware of the choices. I mean, if the worst thing you think you can pick up at a salon is lice, boo-boo. We're gonna have
it's not just lice. Cool. So that's one thing that I think people need to watch out for. Some of the states that have been working on that the last few years are Arizona, Texas, Florida, and it happens along the lines of some conservative-leaning states tend toward that, and we have legislation in the Democratic-leaning states, and this is a perfect segue, in states like California, Washington State, there has been legislation formed or attempted to limit small business or to redefine independent contractors or to eliminate booth rental as we know it in that particular state. Personally, I have dealt with, in Washington State, battling a bill that targeted cosmetologists specifically to get rid of booth rental, as well as being able to booth rent to someone else in your space. And I am a salon co-owner of a booth rental salon. And what that would mean is that I could not work in my own salon. And that is problematic because I make my money behind the chair. I don't make money above and beyond to support my personal expenses or business expenses from my booth renters. It really just covers the expenses of the actual booth rental salon. So that would be difficult. It would completely change the paradigm for booth rental salons of the nature that I am in. Also, what is happening in California, they have passed legislation with independent contracting where they're trying to redefine it because of companies like Uber, that they are exploiting people that are working as what we call 1099 workers and not legitimately working as their own business, because they're not determining their own schedule, they're not determining their own prices, they're not determining the conditions that they're working in, they have to pay for their own gas, et cetera, et cetera. For salons, what that has meant, and they have passed since an amendment called AB 5 to really hunker down and define, especially for our industry, what it looks like to clearly say you're your own business. And if someone is actually doing it right from the get-go, it won't be an issue. But if they have actually been misclassifying workers and need to figure out, I need to either go the route of having employees because I have a schedule, an employee manual, a uniform, a policy manual, etc. It's going to be an issue because they're going to fall in the middle, and that it defaults to misclassification. And so getting all the way to making sure that every single business is licensed and independent and running their own schedule and taking their own money, and all of those things are something that's reviewed in that. Last thing that we're going to talk about is an interesting topic. Cody, you want to go into it?
Yes, so it's the implementation of or not, I guess not really the implementation, but more of like the combining of the tip tax credit to cosmetologists. It seems after, like Darcy and I, we were digging into the legislation and looking into it, and kind of on paper, like it looks like, oh, okay, this is something that's going to target like the chain salons, the ones that have employees, and it shouldn't really cause any type of problem. But as we started to dig into it, we noticed that it kind of seems like in order to do the type of tax credit for the employees, it looks like they would be taken down to the tipped minimum wage instead of just the regular normal minimum wage, which means all of the employees would take kind of a pay cut to it, all for a little bit more money for the corporate side of things.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, just heads up, we're not lawyers. We're not congressmen or congresswomen or anything. So we could entirely be reading this wrong, but just at the face value of what we've seen, it seems to be leaning in that type of direction. Darcy, what do you think?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think when I first learned about the FICA Tip Tax Credit and that the organizations that are trying to get the cosmetology industry on that, it is legislation that applies to restaurants, bars, and taverns right now, but only them. And basically what it means is that if they get tips, then there's processing fees, and then, you know, they're basically the salon will not be getting that tip money, but they still have to pay expenses of merchant processing on top of that. But unfortunately, in our digging deeper into it, we realized, wow, there really is already legislation that covers that. So it seems A, redundant, and B, it's not really being talked about what the pros and cons are for the employer, and also on the flip side, the employee. If someone's getting more money out of the deal, there's always a trade-off somewhere. And so again, we might be wrong, but in my experience of reading bills, legislation in the last couple of years in my work in Washington State, and Cody's experience in his pre-law work and getting ready for law school, I think it's perfectly understandable for us to be like, question mark, we're not sure. And so we're kind of wary of it, but we're not quite sure where we land on that. So it's good to be aware of it, and it's good to have your ear to the grindstone about what's going on with that, and see for yourself if you support or don't support FICA Tip Tax Credit.
Yeah, and just, I think as you said, just there's always a pro and there's always a con to something. Like a company doesn't try and move or like push lobbying firms or anything towards change without it benefiting them in some way. And while on paper it just looks like they get a couple of bucks more in their pocket, it almost seems detrimental to the actual employees that are doing the work. And it probably requires just a little bit more of a magnifying
We're digging.
glass, just to
Yeah.
finger on that pulse.
Yeah, exactly. And I just want to make sure that people know why we're having this conversation. You know, part of what we do for the Sovereign Stylist is we are trying to make sure that people that didn't go to business school or law school or, you know, learn to be a CPA, that they realize that there's all that involved in running your own business, and that knowing your rights as a booth renter or an employee is really, really important. And so no matter what, whether you're an employee or your own small business, it is important that you be educated in what's going on and understand it to a certain degree, and to be able to say, you know, hey, that's not right for me. If someone is over here and they're like, hey, I want to hire you, and I'm a big proponent of this particular piece of legislation, and you don't agree with it, and it's going to impact either your career as an employee or your business, that is your right, your constitutional right to be like, hey, I am not down with that. And you don't have to go work for that person or rent from that person. You should have your eyes wide open. So that's part of why we're doing this education, because we recognize that we're constantly trying to find information from so many different sources, and we're here to support you in knowing your rights. And so it's up to you to make the decision of what's right for you, but we're here just to give the information.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people just think that running a business is balancing the books every day, hiring and firing, or setting up leasing agreements as booth renters would be doing. But there is also a legality to it. Like you have to keep your thoughts and everything onto laws that are constantly changing, and those laws sometimes will affect how you have to run your business.
Right, and the other thing is some people find out after the fact that they're being exploited, or that something's not legal, or that they're being misclassified, and the important thing is to know how to unwind that yarn after the fact of like, I did not know, I know now, and now I'm going to know and do better. And so that's what we're trying to empower you to do. And I think that's pretty much it. So what we reviewed today was deregulation of the cosmetology industry, limiting of small business and or booth rental, and also the FICA Tip Tax Credit, sorry. And if you have any questions, please let us know, comment below. Make sure you do the thumbs up for us if you liked the video, if you want to see more videos like this, and subscribe to future content so that we can continue to educate you on different aspects of what the Sovereign Stylist wants to bring to you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Cody, so much. And just want to say thanks to your kitty as well.
Thanks.
Awesome. Have a good day, and see you on the Sovereign Stylist in the future.
Later, everyone.